Welcome back to the Other Side Lifestyle Podcast with Jim and Aram. Today we have a doctor. She's got a lot of letters after her name. All right, Christle has a lot of. She's got DO. She's got MS. She's got CAQSM. She does not have COVID. She survived that while she was helping in the hospitals during that time. We're going to talk about how she handled that. She loves men with an excessive amount of body hair. She doesn't love the hair, but she loves the men who have it. And her dog is on crack recently. He used to be more of like she used to be more of a sober dog. Now is very, intense, apparently. We're going to find out some of that kind of stuff. And she coaches people.
And she rounds out the second guest that we've had from Renaissance Periodization. The leadoff hitter was Nick Shaw, and I think he did an above average job.
Oh boy!
Yeah.
So you have mildly average, above average size shoes to fill with that conversation.
Great.
We got to get him. We got him giggling a little bit.
Oh
yeah. We got him to like smirk and giggle, which was huge. I think for Nick, I think that's a lot.
Definitely.
Yeah, and you're already winning. You're smiling right now. And I don't know if you guys, Chris, I don't know if you knew this or not, but Aram's from Russia.
I did not know. It's the first time I'm hearing this. This is amazing.
She can't escape Soviets.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, by the way, that you have to deal with any of our culture whatsoever, because we are insane people, but hopefully you figured out a way to coexist.
Yeah. At least, no, I wish I could speak Russian a little bit better. Unfortunately, the words that Mike teaches me to say out loud are not very ladylike. And
you could say them here.
Are the perfect words to know in a different language.
I'm good with parroting. I'm actually not, like, other than bliet.
By the way, blyat in Russian means whore, and it's also used as a sentence filler. Like in Russian,
instead of saying you just say
whore.
You
say blyat. Just you say blah 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 blyat, and then you say blah 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 blyat.
I'm gonna start just saying that in English. Anytime I want to say I'm just gonna say whore.
There you go.
So I was thinking, whore, how should we whore? Like, that's what they're saying.
Yes, that's literally the translation. It makes no fucking sense in English whatsoever, but in Russian it sounds so eloquent and so beautiful, just rolling off the tongue. But enough about linguistics. Let's figure out what it is that Christle is here for. Let's start with some of your credentialing and what made you choose the path that you chose.
Oh gosh. Man, it just makes me feel really old when people ask that now. I'm like, oh man, we got to go back. We got to go way back.
Just tell us your age and your body weight, and then we'll just ask all the offensive things we're not supposed to ask women.
Any body dysmorphic or food disorders that you may have also.
I'm 41 years old. I have 80 units of Botox in my face. That's probably faded a little bit. Awesome. I started, at least 20 years ago. I thought I wanted to be a chemist. I thought I wanted to do organic chemistry, synthesize big molecules. Took a really extended time in undergrad because they paid me to stay. Sure, why not?
Why did they pay you to stay?
Because I applied for a bunch of research fellowships, and they, I was awarded them. So they're like, hey, cool. You have good grades. You like to do stuff in the lab. You're probably going to publish some stuff about like making some molecules that might cure cancer. Probably not, but it's usually the default. Like when you're begging for the government for grant money, it's like, we're going to cure cancer. Here you go. Here's, X amount of, hundreds of thousands of dollars for the next 3 years or something. So
it never quite pans out that way.
Yeah. So ended up doing that. Went to grad school and decided that the PhD just wasn't really for me. Got the master's, so that's where the MS comes from. Taught a little bit of chemistry to junior college, and then moved on to med school, where then I took also an extended year. I took an extra year to teach for a teaching fellowship. So they, pay some of your way to, make the burden of med student loans a little bit more bearable. I always liked sports, but I knew that I didn't have the genetics to be an athlete. So sports medicine, like, primary care sports medicine was sort of what I was like leaning towards in medical school, and then ended up going to Philadelphia, did family medicine. Then we moved to Vegas to do sports medicine. And that was around, the end of my last year in family medicine was when COVID hit. And then all throughout Vegas, COVID was still a thing. And then we moved to Michigan. And
so when you were in Vegas, and you said you were you actively practicing family medicine?
Yes, you're actually required, even though you're still in training and you're still a fellow, you still have to see primary care patients at least once a week. So I would have I would see all the athletes as part of like not necessarily student health. All the D1 athletes had like direct access to me for anything, whether it's a sports injury, whether it's like a cold. A lot of times it was like COVID return to play. That was a huge thing that was ever evolving throughout that entire year. So, and then I would also see patients in the like regular family medicine clinic with the residents once a week as well.
And what kind of stuff were you seeing in the primary care element?
In the non-athlete population?
Yeah, that's definitely. I mean, our audience is going to be mostly lifestyle general population, and that's who we basically serve and want to speak to. So I'm always curious to see what type of ailments people were suffering from. Were they lifestyle issues? Were they preventable? Blah blah blah.
Oh yeah, I 100%. High blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol.
But that's genetic. That's not their fault. That's not their fault.
It's like my back. It's like my back problem. It's genetic.
It's completely 100% genes, right? Is that?
Yeah.
There's a genetic component to some of it. Some, depending on who you're depending on, there are certain populations, particularly in Southeast Asia, where the apolipoprotein B, is all sorts of wonky. And, these are also the people that can't seem to really build muscle, so to speak. And also just naturally at the age of like 19, will have like the worst lipid panel that you've ever seen. And it's like, damn. And when you're 40, you sort of expect that, but it's like, you're a skinny person, you don't have a lot of muscle, and you have like, your lipids are like 200, 300 something.
Jesus Christ. And that's purely genetic at that.
For those people, yes. For the majority of the people that I've seen as a resident and as a fellow, both in Pennsylvania and in Vegas, I think now my patient population's a little bit different. It's a lot of it is lifestyle. Yeah.
So I was going to go back to kind of the markers, because I know a lot of times, not just a small deviation away from the general conversation, but I know a lot of times people are freaking out about cholesterol numbers. And we've had Michael Twyman on here, who's a cardiologist, and had some other people who are well versed. But you mentioned ApoB and all those types of biomarkers. Are there any biomarkers to you that seem more relevant when it comes to cardiovascular function and health that we should be looking for?
Hard to say. And I actually listened to that podcast with the cardiologist, had a lot of good nuggets in there. I will say ApoB is also one of them. The calcium score is also one that I'm starting to look at. And I guess the reason why I'm like hesitant to like kind of say that is nowadays my patient population is Gen Pop, but even still the like, how do I put this? I don't know if they're necessarily the worried well kind of group that I'm starting to deal with. It's hard when you have people who are like, the A1C is 15, your, lipid panel, your total cholesterol is 300. Is that ApoB like marker or that calcium score really going to tell me anything that's going to change my management, other than I need to get you on a med now and then hopefully sell you down the line some sort of lifestyle intervention, as we're getting you like better, because I don't like prescribing medication. And every time I do for these types of things, I always try and sell it as we can get you off of this, but you're going to have to do some work. And, you know, sometimes you don't see them for another 6 months. And the next time you see them, they're in the hospital for like, you know, a heart attack or a stroke. And it's like, fuck, dude.
We know that
Mm-hmm.
these medications, prescriptions are helpful when in these situations. We're seeing, it seems like, younger and younger people needing to get on things. Do we have any long-term studies or research to show that this stuff is good if you're on for 30, 40, 50 years potentially?
Well, even the studies that I have looked at, it's mostly all done in older populations.
Yeah.
I'm actually not really familiar with any studies of like, you know, you're 25 years old. The cardiovascular risk score of like whether or not you should put somebody on a statin, the age at which that starts at, where all the research has been done, is the age of 40. So,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you put in, you know, your blood pressure, your age, smoking history, what your cholesterol is. I can't remember if you have a history of diabetes, and then it like, you know, pumps out some, you know, 10-year risk of having some sort of cardiovascular event. And then from there you triage, like, should this person be on a statin? Yes. If, you know, your risk is like 7.5% or something like that, or, you know, and no, if it's pretty low. And then it's always like, you know, counsel on lifestyle interventions if it's, you know, super low.
I'm curious with the statins, because that's the one thing where I've heard people very confidently give completely opposite viewpoints.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to worry about it. You know, I hear in France, average cholesterol is 300 plus, yet they have lower rates of heart attack. They're probably living less stressful lives. We don't have to worry about our cholesterol the way that we are told we have to worry about it. And other people are like, no. And then the downsides of being on a statin. These are all the possible side effects. A lot of things to worry about. It's like, don't bother getting on it. Just gotta, you know, fix some stuff. But then other people saying, no, you should be on it, who I also respect. What's your take on that? What things should people be aware of if a doctor is telling them yes to get on it? Because not all doctors are going to do what you just said, where you're looking at all the factors. They're just going, this is what's going on. This is the drug you should be taking.
Yeah, my big thing is I try and figure out what is there in that moment. I at least try to sort of assess how likely are they to do lifestyle changes, and not just with, you know, the cholesterol levels, because cholesterol levels alone is not really, you know, going to tell me much of anything. It's usually a whole like cascade of other things as well. The blood pressure is usually up, the, you know, sugar is probably up. It's really the trifecta where you have all of that stuff going. I'm like, fuck, dude, we you know, I can't. That's when it was very apparent from their kind of demeanor, their social history, taking a look at how many packs of cigarettes they smoke. You know, what do you eat in a day? Take me through, what did you eat today before you got here? What did you do when you woke up? Oh, you went to Wawa. What did you eat at Wawa? I know Wawa. I do. I know exactly what you can buy at Wawa. So don't give me this like, oh, I was running late, so I got, you know, I got like a croissant sandwich with like fried eggs and bacon. And I'm like, no. I know that. Like, there are other things at Wawa. Like, come on now. Let's keep it real here.
They have a great build your own menu.
Oh yeah. It's just, you know, you click on the screen and then it all comes out, and it's actually pretty glorious. You can
And even some of the wraps that they have in the refrigerated section, under 400 calories, 30 plus grams of protein. You know, the label's right there to tell you exactly what you're getting.
Oh yeah. I used to do that on the way to the hospital, like before my 24-hour shift. I would just like stop a couple blocks away and load up and then go to the hospital. And
it's called meal prep, Christle. Respect yourself.
I mean, that is meal prep. She was preparing her. She was doing, but that's
she has a meal prep. She has a meal prep company. Wawa.
Fuck Icon. Fuck trifecta system. She goes straight to Wawa and Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
I mean, we laugh about that because to us it's such an elementary part of our day now, like just ingredient preparation, understanding a nutrition label, knowing the value of walking, understanding the value of strength training. Like, all these things are so basic to us as fitness professionals. But it's alarming to me, though, when you start airport setting, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you're in and out of airports all the time,
Mhm.
and now with Jimmy and I traveling more, we're honestly we're exposed to it more and more.
Yeah.
And the decisions that people voluntarily make when there are other options available are astonishing to me. And I have to ask myself, is it because there's a fundamental lack of understanding of what's good, better, best? Or is it purely because that individual doesn't give a fuck in that moment? And I think as a professional in this field on both the fitness and nutrition proactive lifestyle side versus the reactive medicine side, what would you say to that?
Oh, I think it's a little bit of both. As you were talking, just giving that scenario, reminds me very fondly of when before I applied to med school, I volunteered. I was living in Chicago, and I volunteered to do some like healthy kids, neighborhood program where you would go into like the west side and south side of Chicago and try and like teach kids and teens nutrition and work with some of the work with some of the nonprofits to kind of work in the local community to see how we can like have safe spaces for kids to play and do community walks together with like security guards because you don't want to get shot. um
Right.
What's worse, bad nutrition or a bullet to the head?
I'd say
and
bad nutrition. The bullet to the head at least is quick.
That
The
is
yeah,
death,
quick.
the
Yeah,
death is quick with that.
very quick.
unless they miss.
That's true. God, that's
uh,
true.
it just and I remember going to one of the high schools and like handing stuff out, like just like, hey, like wide-eyed and innocent and young and hopeful, and teens are just like, this is nasty, and just like just totally disregarding you or yelling at you like, why are you here, go away, you like Asian person, and other sorts of fun things that was a real nice culture shock. I think it
Yeah.
was a great experience, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's a little bit of both, depending on who you're looking at.
So I have a travel question for you. Our
Yeah.
true fans will know where this question's coming from, and
Oh
Aram
boy.
is being requested to not interrupt, interject, or say anything until Christle has answered the question. We talk about traveling and
Mhm,
meal prep.
mhm.
What's your take on opening up a can or a bag of tuna fish on the plane? Not before you get on the plane, but on the plane, because, hey, this is what I've prepared and it's convenient. It's already in a pouch. Tell us your take on that.
You know, I've used some of those Starkist tuna like 70-calorie packets.
Mm-hmm.
On the plane?
Ooh, no.
Correct. That's the question, is
That's
on the plane. Hey, I'm scheduled to eat, and I could have eaten it before I got on the plane, but I wasn't supposed to eat till 1. My flight's at 12:30, so now I'm going to eat it on the plane. Just,
I've smelled
courtesy
worse.
other human beings. What's your general consensus on that?
I've smelled worse on the plane.
That's a great. Are you running for president? What the hell kind of answer is that? What kind of answer was that? She doesn't know which one she's going to offend with her.
I think that's an honest answer. I think
Just
the
like,
reality.
The question was not, is it the worst possible smell that you could smell on a plane? The question was, how do you feel about that?
Dude, she's had to see like ball sacks and buttholes and like Lord
Correct.
knows what
And
else.
knowing all of that, I have a feeling like she'd be like, you got to be kidding me. You're opening up this can of tuna right now, based on how she's responding. I just,
I mean, I would laugh. I would probably look over and like chuckle, but I wouldn't be overly offended by it.
Correct. Yeah, because you have a background of meal prepping and knowing people prioritizing their health, and that's probably the only reason. But otherwise, I feel like you'd be like, "What a douchebag." I feel like you'd look at this guy.
By the way,
we call it Tunagate here on Other Side Lifestyle Podcast.
this comes from me opening up tuna on planes.
Well, so I've seen people on the plane who have like just purposely farted the entire time without getting up to go to the bathroom. Like, that is offensive. That's offensive at some point. But I don't, whatever. It's tuna. I'm not.
There's worse things that happen. I mean,
there are worse things that happen.
If you're triaging,
it's not the
more
end
uncomfortable. It's
right.
the baby. The crying baby is way worse than any tuna I'll ever open up.
The only difference is you chose to emit the smell to your neighbors.
And
The
they
baby
chose,
is
and
a
they
child.
They
Sit next
chose
to
to
you.
bring, and they
It's a
chose to bring
baby.
that piece of shit onto the plane.
Piece of shit.
That's,
Tell
I
us
mean, I'm
about your
sorry.
dog.
Ever 99 out of 100 times when there's a dog on a plane, it's well behaved, it's sitting
Mhm.
quietly, and it's totally fine.
No, what I
Yeah.
would say is I'd say have the tuna for when there is a crying baby on. Then you bust it out. and
Just
it's
to
like,
exacerbate the problem.
yes. Oh, it's like that.
Yep. Multiple.
Lemon
and not-
pepper, motherfuckers.
no, lemon pepper's benign. I'm gonna go fucking straight up sweet chili because that's gonna stink shit up.
Chili.
Or even like they have the barbecue one gets a little musty as well.
Oh man.
But
Baby still crying.
we
Anchovies coming up.
sardines better.
Sardines are valid.
So we deviate, but Crystal and I were at the Swiss Symposium this weekend, which is a fitness, nutrition, I guess we can call it physical therapy based conference. And I think one of the things that I had noticed this weekend was that as long-lasting professionals in this field, we know that there's really no new monumental nuggets of information that exist out there to help people with their nutrition, with their training. Unfortunately, the general population believes that there is some new thing or thing that they're not doing that they're missing.
Yeah, the one thing.
It's the thing. So, Crystal, how do you have that conversation with your clients to let them know, say, hey, everything we need to know has already been figured out. We just have an application problem, and that's where I come into play.
Ooh, I think I tend to really dodge around that bullet, to just give it to them straight. I think I try and come to them with like sort of, hey, I'm in this boat together, because quite frankly, there are some really dumb things that I thought about it, it existed in nutrition, not even just a couple of years ago, like 5,
Like
10
what?
years ago. Oh,
Like what? Let's hear these. This is great.
Oh yeah. I mean, back in the 90s when I was looking, growing up with like Shape magazine and whatnot, every person who had talked about lifting weights and gaining weight, it was always some like skinny bikini model type, chick who already, just like built up some muscle and now she looks like a bikini model. It's like, oh yeah, strength training's great. And then every single time they had a fat person on there with like their story, because they'd always like feature like any person can write in and apply to be like featured in Shape magazine. It's like, oh, I do some cardio, I do some, maybe some light lifting, but barely. And then, ta-da, like I've lost weight. So I always thought, I should probably just do a lot of cardio and maybe weight train, but not really. So, and then the other really big thing that I completely didn't realize existed was the whole concept of like maintenance calories or reverse dieting or whatever the hell, we can, same thing, but sort of not the same thing. And so I always thought that whatever calories you ended at, like on a hypocaloric phase, like fat loss phase, that's where you're going to end up. Like you're just going to stay there and that's going to be it forever. So every single time I think I went a year and like my hair started to fall out and I started like the growling inside. Like I couldn't sleep at night because like my stomach felt like it was eating itself. And I failed my first anatomy class in med school because I couldn't function. And I was like, I just got to willpower my way through this. Like I want to be 130 pounds. Like, and it just finally like, oh yeah, this isn't going to work. So
you mean there's psychological ramifications to dieting for too long? Well, I think that's the biggest issue because I used to be very dogmatic, like anti-dieter. Like when I first became a nutrition coach, like especially like when we were going through NCI, I think the reverse diet thing was really popular and we were getting hammered with that information. And then we were also getting hammered with like, don't promote dieting because that's bad. But the reality is if you're a 350-pound woman, like, I'm sorry, like you're going to have to fucking diet for some time and it's going to be relatively uncomfortable for a while.
Right.
Until you start to build in some habits that make sense for the long term, but then you're still going to have to phase back into a diet periodically, if not more often, a larger part of the year than not, depending on how much weight you have to lose, because at some point it's not just aesthetic. Right. At that point, it's an actual health risk.
Right.
That's not the same advice I'm going to give to somebody who's 140 pounds who desires 130.
Yeah.
But if somebody's 250, 275 at 5'2", like we probably can assume there's going to be some blood sugar dysregulation and some lipidemia and everything else.
Yeah.
That we have to like put that fire out quick.
Right. Right.
So in those cases, like when you start to talk about the context of, you know, deploying different styles of dieting or different modalities of training for different populations, what are some of the standards that you use to say, okay, cool, you fall into this bracket, this is about the course that we're going to take. You fall into this bracket, this is how things are going to change.
You know, really actually just getting to know them. Like take me through a day, take me through your workout. Do you work out? You know, what do you do when you go to the gym? Do you have a gym membership? Do you have stuff at home? You know, what do you like to cook? What do you know, do you have kids? Like, do you prep for them differently? So really, I try to get to know them as much as possible. And I think that's also just kind of like physician, you know, in me. Like I'm the type of person that's like gonna know who your family is. I'm gonna know who your mom is. I'm gonna, you know, if you're having a kid, like I'm gonna take care of you and the kid. Like it just, you know, those are those little things that also kind of help me to like, especially when you're seeing a lot of patients, it's like, oh yes, this person is, you know, has this one thing or is from, you know, this country in Africa that I had to look up. You know, so if they are kind of the, you know, I'm 150 pounds, I'm, you know, kind of middle-aged, I have done all these types of diets, here's what I typically eat, I go to the gym 5 days a week, you know, you're pretty on, you know, point, and maybe we just have to tweak some stuff a little bit. But yeah, if you're 5'2", 270, you've got, you know, crappy blood markers, and you're kind of stuck. And I find myself really gravitating towards sort of that patient, you know, that client patient population. We're gonna have to start from the ground up. Like, you know, here's a palm sized, you know, here's a palm, like, you know, trying to read a label. Cause for them, sometimes it and trying to simplify things, because I feel like also that crowd is like very much like invested in, like they'll see that one thing on Instagram, or they'll watch Dr. Oz episode or something, like this one thing is going to help me lose weight. And it's like, no. Like we got to stick to the basics. This is what's going to work. And I do tend to, you know, try to like make sure to help them streamline their goals and try and give them expectations, like expand their timeline, because they really want those results fast. And it's like, we didn't get here really fast. We got here over years of habits.
And that's the hardest thing for a lot of these people. I mean, even just including myself. Like I think anybody that chases any type of an aesthetic change, the acute response to food is not as acute as we expect it to be. Right. There's really the response to food in general just takes a while for it to actually do it, unless it's something that's either anaphylactic in nature or something that you're intolerant to. Then there's an acute response to food. But from a body transformation standpoint, you can diet for 5, 6, 7 weeks, and it's not like you're always going to be promised linear fat loss or this constant downward slope of weight until you get to this perfect number that you have in your head. And then you can finally say, hey, I've made it. Right. There's going to be bumps and turns in the road. There's going to be weeks of non-compliance. There's going to be 3 or 4 restaurant meals out. Your kids are going to get sick. Something's always going to inevitably happen. But I think that avatar that you painted of that 150-pound woman that's done it all, that already has some really good baseline habits, that's a really frustrating place to be for a woman, especially because she believes that she's doing everything right. But that's when the need to fine tune and start to become even more conscious of the behavior audit becomes really necessary. Can you talk about just the mental side of that? Because I think the physical side of this stuff is really simple. We know that if we eat less for a period of time, it will produce something. If we train with weights with some relative intensity, we should build muscle. So we got that figured out. Yeah. But how do you counsel somebody through the mental downshift that's going to occur when that person is frustrated and they don't want to continue down the path that they don't believe is working anymore?
So I try to prepare them for the worst and undersell as much as possible, because I know how frustrating it is to get to, like, you know, 4 months, 5 months, and you're like, you know, I remember one of my first like cuts, lost like 12 pounds. And I remember Mike telling me, he's like, you're going to look really unremarkable. And sure enough, like if you look at the before and after pictures, I looked pretty unremarkable. Like there wasn't like this, defined set of abs. So
What was the time horizon of that 12 pounds?
oh, I think it was 12 weeks.
So a pound a week.
Yeah. And it was.
And what was your starting point?
Oh gosh, I think I was at like mid 150s.
So
And
you fit that avatar perfectly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
mid 150s, and you were losing a pound a week.
Yeah.
And it was probably very strict for the 12 weeks.
Yeah, but I also hadn't really spent a lot of time. Like my training age was still fairly young. Like I had sort of bounced around with different programs, and I was consistent, but like I wasn't really training with higher volumes. That seemed to kind of help me grow as I like moved on. I was doing powerlifting, so very minimal, like just doing the main lifts. Nothing striking, but like if I was trying to do sort of like a real physique transformation, I probably would have structured my training a little bit differently. But
so talk about that. That's huge. What would you have done different? Because this is massive. I think a lot of people are going to group fitness, they're going to CrossFit, they might have these goals of being a power lifter, or I want to get stronger, but I also want to lose weight, but I also want to do this, and there's all these competing goals. What would you have specifically done different, knowing that physique change was your biggest goal?
Yeah, no, I probably would have stopped powerlifting.
Why?
Because at the end of the day, that was more important to me. I think in the moment, I decided that powerlifting was kind of my shtick, so to speak. Because I during that time, this was like 2012, 2013, 2014. I failed anatomy. I dieted pretty fucking hard without any like maintenance period. So I just like ballooned right back up because I wasn't really given a whole ton of guidance on how to like not be a total piece of shit, shoveling, food in my face at the time. I feel like powerlifting is kind of like if you like lifting weights and you're uncomfortable with the idea that like I really care about aesthetics, and I just didn't want to admit it to myself. I didn't like, I just felt like there was something icky about it. And it took me years of just, doing that internal work to be like, yeah, I want this. Like I have gotten rid of all the magazines. I've like gotten rid of people on my social media and like just sat with my own thoughts and just what am I doing wrong? Like, am I a bad person because I want to look a certain way? Am I hurting somebody because I want to look a certain way? Is it going to give me is it going to change anything, remarkable? Like, give me like the peace and happiness and lots of money that I desire? Not really, but it's a goal that I have never been able to attain in my lifetime. And the trade-off seems worth it. There was a lot of like anti being pro aesthetics, like, oh yeah, that's so bad, don't diet, love yourself the way you are, haze. So it just getting rid of those people from my like feed or whatever. I still had this like desire to be like look a certain way.
So it was almost like you were living in that competitive area where it's like, I wanted to be strong because that's what everybody's been telling me. Don't worry about your body shape or your size. Just worry about getting stronger. And then as a byproduct, you'll just magically reach this physique. And I think to some degree with a novice who has a low training age, to go from couch to powerlifting, sure, you're going to change some of your body for sure.
Yeah.
But at some point you will plateau because your body is not getting the stimulus that's required for it to change any further.
Oh yeah.
And you just you just did a recent photo shoot, right? It wasn't too long ago.
It was my first photo shoot. It was this summer.
So talk about that preparation and kind of what it took, because I think when people see images and then they get the context of how that image was created, it starts to really paint a much more accurate picture than just like, here's what Christle did from here to here.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden we fast forward 5 years and this is where her physique now is. Like, I want people to understand really what it takes to get to those finite lower body fat percentage numbers and what you had to do to get there.
So even before, I should rewind it back a little bit. And so even before I decided to sort of do an emotional support prep is how I phrased it, because Mike was prepping for a bodybuilding show.
Oh, that's why you did it?
I was like, like he's got 16 weeks. Like I got nothing else to do. Like I've never actually had a 16-week block to really do that. because, residency fellowship, like I was just always working and my recovery was total dog shit. So, the 24 hours. So I was like, yeah, why not? Like, why not? And then I'll do a photo shoot because, I'm not stepping on stage for various reasons. Just not my jam. It's too expensive. I have loose skin on my abdomen from being 198 pounds at multiple points in my life. So it's like, it's not worth it. In any case, even before then, so I've been on semaglutide since 2022, January of 2022.
Oh, interesting.
And so the talk that I gave in Edmonton 2 weeks ago kind of took people through the history of weight loss drugs, what GLP-1 agonists are, how they affect, how they were, discovered from diabetes, and like where we're going next. And I've always had is it a hunger problem versus a willpower problem? And even my primary doctor at the time, Spencer Nadolski, was like,
Oh, nice.
have you decided, have you thought of, giving Wegovy a shot, semaglutide, because I think you'd be a good candidate for it. And I actually said no. I don't want to do it for the longest time because I kind of struggled with that willpower versus hunger bit. But there were times in my life where even Mike noticed that something was just different. He's tried to create a template for people like me called the Hunger Templates years ago, where I would eat, chicken breast, I'd eat 3 cups of broccoli, I'd eat, a small amount of rice, and my stomach would be completely full and bloated, and I would still be ravenous. So when like I see skinny guys like trying to do the lean bulk thing and like it's so hard, I like really just want to like just sort of punch them in the face. So like let me show you how this is done. Let me and so and then thinking about quality of life, that am I like, I'm not productive at times, and at work when I'm trying to diet. And I'm not talking about, even at my weight right now at 145, I would probably be ravenous. I probably would be biting my nails right now. And I would be thinking of food the entire time. I would just not really be checked into a conversation with you because it's been there my entire life, no matter what. So,
wow.
What are some,
yeah.
I was gonna say, what are some things that people who are considering taking, Ozempic, what's the one called again? The W one that you're
Wegovy.
Wegovy, but
Yeah.
semaglutide. What are some things that they could? Because my concern with it is the person prescribing it, and if it's just this is what we give you, there's no conversation, there's no strategy. What other questions should people be asking? Is there a certain amount that they should keep an eye out for? Like that seems like a lot for my purposes, and obviously this is all everybody's different.
Yeah.
But what are at least some information that people can go into that are a little bit more armed before going into God knows what kind of doctor they're going to get?
Right. I guess, I will just sort of guesstimate as to why Spencer thought I was a good candidate for it. It's like, what are the common side effects? So nausea, vomiting, diarrhea are very common side effects. They seem to go away with prolonged use. Like that's why they start you on a very low dose. And even at the very low dose, it's actually not meant to be effective. It's really just to get you used to side effects.
Oh.
But for me, it actually was like, oh, I can tell a difference. Like, this is great. I can be productive at work. Like, I can eat my meals. I can eat my meals during maintenance, and I can eat my meals during a hypocaloric phase on a very small amount and just not have this awful food noise, as the way they describe it. Sort of, I'm not like before when we go out to eat, I'm not, when we're having conversations with people, I'm not actually paying attention. I'm really thinking about when the food is going to get here. And then when the food gets here, I'm actually not having a conversation because I'm too busy shoveling food down my gullet. And then now after I have shoveled all the food down my gullet and I'm full, I can now be present in a conversation with people at the table. Like that, and to go from that to looking at Mike, having, just having a casual night out and actually being able to say like, I'm full. And like, I didn't even have to think about it. It just was sort of automatic. Like I don't have to like, oh my God, portion control, and oh my God, I can only eat this amount, and like I have to drink my water, like I have to have a sip, and like am I chewing slowly enough? Like all those fucking little things that's like, oh, if you just do that, you're just gonna lose weight. Like, shut up. Like, shut up. Like, do you want me to come to the restaurant with a goddamn checklist every single time? Like, that is just not, for some people, that's just not how it works. Yeah. So I've been on it, and I have been able to go from about 170 to about 155 without a whole ton of work. The standard things, but I think about 155 is where I started at before the emotional support prep with Mike. And so from there, it was still a diet. You're still going to be a little bit hungry, but the degree in which you are hungry is just vastly different. It really does take the edge off. So at the end, I started to get, super hungry towards the end. 12,000 steps a day, which if you have a desk job, sometimes doesn't really lend well. Like I had to fit it in here and there. And then lifting 6 days a week, which seems to be okay. Yeah, 6 days a week. But it was mostly the cardio that was hard to like manage with a desk job. So, that was pretty much it.
Where were you calorically?
Let's see. So I had 2 high days. So on my higher days, I would have like somewhere around 1,800 calories, like Saturday and Sunday. And it would be about like 160 protein. I'd say 50 grams of fat, 180 grams of carbs. And then on the low days, I mean, the rest of the 5 days, it was like somewhere around the range of like 160 grams of protein, 40 to 45 grams of fat, and then somewhere between 50 to 100 grams of carbs to get that like deficit going. So I know that not everybody subscribes to that kind of low and high days. Some people just do straight macros all throughout the week. So I think seems to be a decent strategy, at least for me, but I know that people, different ways to skin the cat, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, you still drove an overall deficit even with the 2 high days, and I guess that's the point of, instead of just being isocaloric. There's also, I think, a psychological implication that occurs there because it allows you some mental rebound on those 2 days. The problem is I think you probably dealt with it in a controlled fashion where you weren't filling up 1,800 calories worth of fucking Jersey Mike's and dog shit.
Oh, no.
You were filling it up with potatoes and vegetables and getting extra carbs from natural starch sources and stuff like that.
Pretty much. Instead of having like a tiny little pathetic amount of potatoes, like I would have like a really decent amount of potatoes like on a Friday. And I just remember like breakfast, I was like, yes, like I can eat egg whites, I can eat some potatoes, and it's just gonna be a great day. So, and then we also did jujitsu a couple times a week, but just drilling, nothing too strenuous. So,
but still, that's a lot of energy output between 12,000 steps a day, 6 days a week of training, and then jujitsu, even just rolling around. That's that's a high level of energy demand. Not that we can quantify it in any measurable way. Just for the listeners out there who are like, well, I can measure my energy.
It's on my
output.
Fitbit.
It's on my watch that doesn't fucking know what's going on. But I think that's a great illustration of what somebody had to endure, with the caveat of also knowing that there was a pharmaceutical aid present.
Yeah.
And I think that you being transparent about it is huge, because I think a lot of people would talk about that story and leave that part out.
Yeah. Also the Botox, that was the other thing that really, for a while irritated me, but I just really don't care anymore. Like people being just not so transparent. Cause I think especially for females, if you're going to go down that rabbit hole, I think it's much easier to viralize and to start making changes, especially in social media. Like you can kind of tell, like people leave a electronic trail of what you used to sound like, what you used to look like, any changes that you make to your face. So, and that's how I kind of punt it. I just had this conversation earlier today with a client. We were talking about, PEDs, and it was just, you know, we were entertaining it as a thought exercise, and it's just it was like, yeah, you know, people, you have to be mindful of those things. Like, how is that going to affect your business? How is that going to affect, you know, if you're putting yourself out on social media and advertising on social media for whatever your business is, your voice is going to change, your skin's going to change, your face is going to change, like all of that stuff. And for the better or worse, it's not like you're, you know, yeah, for what, you know, for what it's worth.
Now, do you plan on continuing being on semaglutide for the duration, or is there any wean off process that you're going to be doing, or are you just going to be straight on it?
You know, I haven't reached that, I haven't crossed that bridge yet. Given my history of obesity, and given that I still have some loose skin, which, you know, has some fat on adipose on it, the extra like adipose tissue on it, I have sort of kind of talked myself into, like, worst case scenario, I'm on a medication for life for a condition that I have dealt with my entire life.
Yeah. I mean, it's no different than a guy being on TRT after 35.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, once you're on it, you're on it for life. And
Right.
so, I mean, I've had to change. I know Jeremy and I have had a pretty deep discussion about this, where I think we both lean on, if the pharmaceutical is necessary and it's
Yeah.
providing a quality of life that you would no longer have without it,
Yeah.
who am I to tell you it's a bad thing, right? I mean, as long as
Right.
you're aware of the potential side effects, as long as you're aware of the potential downstream effects of it, I don't see a problem with it. I can't sit here as a person who's taking 5 IUs of growth and 200 milligrams of test a week. I'm never going to shit on somebody who's taking Ozempic, Wegovy, whatever.
Yeah.
I think as long as there's an awareness of what can potentially happen.
Yeah. Yeah. The potential for pancreatitis, the potential, like, the nausea could come back. You know, there is the black box warning with the particular thyroid cancer. So if you have a family history of that, they have not been able to reproduce the effect in rats with the thyroid cancer in humans. So it's good, but they still have that black box warning. So, you know, always be mindful. Your doctor should be asking you those types of questions. Like, do you have a history of, you know, pancreatitis? Do you have a family history of thyroid cancer? All of that stuff. You know, do you lift weights? I mean, ideally that would all like be in conjunction with everything. But
yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that people listening, hopefully most people listening do lift weights, but if somebody doesn't lift weights, this is part of the problem with information. They're going to hear one thing. Oh, you took that and you lost weight.
Yeah.
Ignoring the fact that you lifted 6 days a week, not even being aware, ignoring, because we've already mentioned on here more than once that you're going to be losing muscle when you're on things like semaglutide if you're not lifting weights.
Yes.
Like, you have to be lifting to maintain send the message to the body that, oh, we need this.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm lifting, the message is sent, oh, I need this. So it's just important that people do understand all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of anybody that I think is it's cool that you're on the clinical side of things and helping people medically, but then also doing the lifestyle proactive stuff that we're doing as coaches, because that's a very rare, I mean, not often will you get a medical practitioner who's got a side gig as a coach who's doing the preventative medicine side or the proactive interventional side that we know is really so important. It's the least sexy thing in the world.
Yeah.
It's purely based on effort and consistency over time. And that's the thing that people don't want to subscribe to. But as somebody who's in the medical field, is surrounded by researchers, is surrounded by some of the top professionals, arguably in our space by far, can you just reinforce the idea of the basics to people and how valuable those basics truly are?
Oh gosh. Yeah. I mean, it really comes down to you know, eating a well-balanced diet, like getting a vegetable in. I think when I see people's diet, getting some sort of vegetable in that's not fried, and getting some sort of lean protein source in, like at least a couple times a day, for the love of God. And then doing something, so it's hard because I like keep getting flashbacks of you know, people who do nothing. And it's like, at that point, you know, I've literally taken the soup can to people. It's like, you don't have weights, you don't leave the house, you actually don't get off the couch. Like, here, let's try something. Here's something at home. Doing home visits. So it really does boil down to, staying active, getting some sort of resistance training, and eating a vegetable and a protein source. Like, I feel like for a lot of the people, especially in the United States, man, you could do so much with just that.
What do you say to the people, like the other avatar? I know Aram had you dive deeper into like the 150-pound person who has the history and all that. Because I've had this conversation recently with a client, and it's not the first time where the person they say they want it, but they really enjoy in their lifestyle going out multiple. I'm talking 5 to 10 times a week, dining out. You're talking once to twice a day, dining out. They like the social aspect. This is something that really brings them joy, that they say, being able to do all this stuff. And there's this fear of cutting these things out, even if it's for a period of time, because, well, when can I bring this back? And I had to have this conversation recently, but what about those people? What reality check would you give them if somebody is coming to you that's kind of like that? They're saying they want it. I want to change, blah, blah, blah. I don't need to repeat it all again, even though I have
where are you going out? Girl, where are you going out? Like, why don't you tell me?
Nice restaurant.
Those in those instances, I will straight up, like, let's look at a menu. Let's see where we can actually come to the middle, I guess, meet in the middle. Because when people pull out, they say they want to go out and they whatever, and it's like you're ordering, unless you're going to the Cheesecake Factory. And even then there's like a lower calorie menu, which is a total joke.
I mean, it was, I had it on Saturday. And I purposely went to the Cheesecake Factory when we were in Columbus, Ohio, because that menu does have a lot of adjustable things on it. Their kitchen has literally everything in the fucking world that you'd ever need. Yeah. But what I will say is I got they have their fit menu or whatever it is. And I got salmon, I got some type of a mashed potato, and I got some vegetables.
Yeah.
Underneath the salmon.
Yeah.
4 teaspoons of oil, probably. Yeah. At least. So the best case scenario is you ask them to hopefully cook it without butter or oil, which I don't think they're capable of. But even with my best attempt at doing the best I possibly could, what said 550 on it.
Yeah.
Was probably more like 1,000.
Considering we were at the Cheesecake Factory in Pittsburgh, and of course Mike and we were watching Nick eat because he had turned pro at a different bodybuilding show, so he actually wasn't competing that week. So we got to watch him, enjoy some meals, which was totally fine. But looking around and looking to see what people order, because I mean, the food looks good. I love looking to see what, waiters and waitresses bring out. I'm like, ooh, that looks really good. But I mean, people are ordering an enormous appetizer to share, an enormous, entree that's not from the fit menu, and then dessert. And then, don't forget your high calorie, like alcoholic drink, your daiquiri margarita. Like, come on, man. Like, we can sort of meet in the middle. Can you maybe have, one drink? Can you actually not drink, especially if you're driving? Like, let's talk about that.
It's just that I think it's just like that reality check. If you really understand that this is a lifestyle, you're not going to do this for a short period of time and then go back to every aspect of your life that got you to the place where you reached out to a coach.
Oh yeah.
People think I can do this for a little bit just to lose the weight. And then they start to realize,
this is for life. Yeah.
This is forever. Like there's things. So like those basics that you talked about of looking at the quality of food, getting protein. If you can't do that, I've posted about that more than once before. If you can't hit a certain amount of protein in a day, you're not that serious about losing weight. Like if you can't even do that one thing, or at least work towards it, you give it 2 days, you're like, I can't hit that much. And it's a low number. We're not even at the goal number yet.
Right.
If people can't do it, then you don't really want to change. People have to really figure out. And that's kind of what you were touching on. Like, I might not ever get to this physique.
Yeah.
Then you find out I am happy. I am okay being here. I don't have to be there to be happy. We have to find that happiness to even potentially ever even get to that place, but we're not all going to look the same way. And we can't be looking at these people who look a certain way and think, if I just follow them, I'm going to be able to look that way.
Yeah.
You know, we have to find that what makes us happy, incorporate those things in our lives. But are those things really making you happy if you end up with a body and some self-hatred? Is going out to eat and having all these drinks really making you happy if you now hate yourself?
Right. Or feel sick. I mean, yeah. Like I used to take the free tortilla chips at Mexican restaurants and I would just dump salt on. It would be a vehicle for salt. Like I can't do that anymore. I can't do that anymore.
It's funny. Last Saturday, I went out at a 75th surprise birthday at Del Frisco's. Aram, you'll either be disgusted or proud of me. Like 60 people there. My cousin's a baller, paid for this whole thing. And I see, you know Del Frisco's, but open bar, everybody's immediately getting a drink. And I wait for probably a solid 30, 45 minutes. And then I get a Captain and Diet Coke because I'm living on the edge. And then we have to sit down for dinner. Everybody at my table all gets the 16-ounce ribeye. And I get the Chilean sea bass. Like none of them even got the fillet because that was like 6 or 8 ounce fillet, but the ribeye was 16 ounces. They all get the ribeye. I get the Chilean sea bass, a little piece of fish over a little bed of white rice. And I'm getting made fun of. How are you going to go to a steak place and get fish? And I'm like, well, I eat steak like 5-6 days a week. And I've never been to a place where I've had a steak and it absolutely blew my mind. Maybe once. Yeah. And I'm like, it's a Saturday night. I don't want to feel like shit. Like you just said how I feel. If I eat a 16-ounce steak right now, I don't know how I'm going to feel. I don't know how they cooked it. I don't know how much butter or oil or things they're using and how it's going to sit with me. I just want to feel good after this meal. And because I eat steak so much, I want some Chilean sea bass. Yeah. And then I'm also looking at the table go like, you're all overweight and you're making fun of me for the meal that I'm getting. Like, whatever. And I felt great. Half of them were like passing out drunk. I did get an espresso martini for Aram because that's his favorite. Ooh. And then I got a beer. It was, just a few drinks where people are sloshed, ordering the steak because, and then complaining later about how they feel. We can't hear you.
I think what you did a great job of is you moderated because you knew you pulled from one place and put into another place, right? Like a lot of people are like, well, I'm going to go out, so I'm going to drink and I'm going to eat everything that's available to me versus I'm going to make a choice strategically because I know that I don't want to, I don't have the calories to allot for all of this stuff. Like luckily for like most of us, like for you as a woman who's 140 pounds, you're maintaining weight at something closer to 2,000 calories, which is unheard of for most women. You know, most of these women are that I'm working with, they come to me and they're purportedly eating 1,500 calories or 1,200 calories, when in reality, we know that number is higher. But for me, I can maintain weight at 3,000 calories, probably. So can Jimmy. So for us, like we have the caloric flexibility to be able to have the drink and maybe have the appetizer or the bread basket and still order the meal. But for most average people, like you have to make a choice and there's going to be a sacrifice. It's either going to be, I'm going to eat whatever I want and then not drink whatever I want, or I'm going to drink whatever I want and then maybe moderate the meal, or maybe get the meal and then not have the dessert or not have the appetizer. But most people in those social settings are not thinking that way. And then when you're asking them to think that way, it immediately puts this negative or restrictive connotation on it, as opposed to, no, that's just you making adult choices.
Yeah. And I think that this is the fear. And again, we've talked about this a bunch before. There's a fear of what their new life is going to look like. There's a fear. I want to be able to do all these things. And they're failing to recognize how if they do put enough time with the fundamentals, with the basics, doing all that stuff, I didn't make a decision on Saturday night based on restriction. It was not at all about, I have to hit this certain number of calories. I'm now making decisions because I know which decisions make me feel good physically. Yeah. As well as emotionally. I mean, I didn't even do it for an emotional reason. It's not like I would feel guilty if I ate 16-ounce ribeye. It's just, I made a decision that made me feel good. Where pre me getting to this place would be like, I want all the shit, especially, hey, I'm not paying for it. I don't go to Del Frisco's that much. I'm getting this big, most expensive steak, blah, blah, blah. Where no, you'll start making decisions because you'll get used to what feeling good feels like. You'll want that feeling. So you don't have to be afraid of what this new you might become, because it might just become a natural new you. And it's not all decisions are made in restrictive states. And people might have looked at me and thought I was making a restrictive decision. I'm like, no, this is what I want. I want this. I don't want to be hammered around my family that I haven't seen in 20 years. Like, I don't, and I don't want to eat all this stuff. It's going to make me feel like shit. But it takes practice to get there.
Yes. People also just like you'd mentioned, people are afraid of like having to deal with that awkward conversation. Like how are you going to respond to it? I think also just trying to kind of give people that guidance of like, yeah, you're going to have some awkward conversations. There's always going to be, grandma or auntie, something or other who's going to make some dumb comment to you about your body, about your diet, about your choices, and just try not to punch her in the face. It happens. It's natural. Like people, ignorant people exist, and grandmas can't they love being nosy. So we need to come up with a plan of like how we're going to respond to that. Like, have you thought about that?
Yeah. And then to know that they're going to make comments no matter what.
Yeah.
Like maybe back before
win.
grandma's saying, you're going to eat all that. Mm-hmm. Now that you change, that's all you're going to have.
Exactly.
It's like,
can't win.
So if you're going to get the comment anyway from certain people, do what the hell you want.
Exactly.
So I'll be mindful of your time here, even though I want to keep you on for another hour, but I'm going to ask you kind of one final, like all encompassing question. As somebody who's been through all of these different phases, whether it be I was obese and I was heavy, I decided to go down the pharmaceutical route. I've had multiple body transformations. I work with general population people. I work with sick people. You have more experience, I think, than most people I think we've ever had on the show. I think that's a fair statement, not only personally, but professionally. If you could distill it all down to like what are these standards and basics that you cannot deviate away from? I don't care if it's your worst day possible. What would those standards look like?
Worst day possible. Get some sort of vegetable and get some sort of lean protein in. And
when you say, and I'm assuming you mean per meal.
Per meal.
Do you like a number of meal type of barometer, or do you just kind of say 3 square meals a day?
I'm more of a 3 to 4. I have 4 meals a day to hit my target. I'm trying to think of like the worst case scenario. Getting protein for breakfast for the general population. But yeah, 3 square meals, like if that's what you can do.
A significant amount, not I had an egg.
No, you're going to need like an egg and some egg whites to go on top of it, or Greek yogurt,
or steak
cheese.
or salmon.
Yes.
Or chicken sausage.
Right.
Or beef brisket, whatever.
And a vegetable and some sort of goddamn vegetable or a piece of fruit, for the love of God. Like that, I think.
But fruit's going to raise your insulin.
Oh,
and carrots are high on the glycemic index, so they make you fat. So don't listen to her. She clearly has just been exposed.
If I cook it, if I add a whole ton of butter to it, then I can change. Then I can slow the digestion of those carrots. Oh God. Don't even get me started on the glycemic index.
How much butter do you put in your coffee? Because obviously that creates a furnace for fat burning. So so more of the staples. We'll get easily distracted. So the protein, the veggie, get that at each meal, significant amount. What other staples are like, this is standard? If you can't do this, you're not that serious.
Also lifting a consistent amount, like the very minimum 3 to 4 times a week. I
take a person who's listening who's totally sedentary. What do they need to be doing? Never lifted in their life.
Oh gosh. We need to start walking around your yes. Yes. Oh Lord. Yeah. Oh yeah.
But that's not enough.
For some
well,
people.
Then you're gonna start lifting. Oh, I'm afraid of the gym. Then shut the fuck up. That's too much, and that's not enough. What do you want?
There were times where I've even lifted once a week. There were blocks where I did the 5-3-1 once a week because that's all I could do in med school. 4 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks at once a week is like not going to kill you, but I would say at minimum at least 3 times a week.
Yeah. Now let me ask you this, because sorry. I don't know. I already said I was going to be done, but
all good.
If you had the choice between like, I only have time for meal prep or a training session, what would you choose?
Training session.
Really?
Yes.
I feel so much better after lifting weights.
Do you mean one day or every day?
Yeah.
Aram, do you mean like if a person's saying, I don't have time to go to the gym and do meal prep? Or are you talking about it's a one-day decision? All right, I'm supposed to do meal prep, but I'm also supposed to go to the gym. What's the question?
That's a lot of context, but
I know.
It is a lot.
I mean, I'm going to tell you that if it's one day, I would still choose meal prep.
So what if it's somebody complaining on a regular basis? Because they don't have time to do all that.
To me,
I'm going team lift.
But most people are struggling more from a lack of preparation and then consistency with nutrition than they are from a lack of training. Because most people, it's not hard to get somebody into the gym three times a week.
Get training sessions delivered to your house, and you can get meal prep delivered to your house. So if somebody's complaining about, I don't have time to do all this stuff, I'm saying then get the training in and order your meal prep until you start managing your time better and you can start making your own meals. So I'm team lift.
Okay. And then sounds like Christle is team lift too.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm fine.
Yeah.
In that context, I'm cool with it.
I have a bunch of ready to drink shakes. We have whey protein shakes. I tend to just overstock on pure protein. I
was going to ask you what your favorite one was. Pure protein.
It's reasonably priced.
The pure protein. Both. Premier. Oh, okay.
There's Premier. I feel like they're
I haven't had the pure.
I feel like they're the same.
Fairlife ones are so good.
Oh, they are a little bit pricier, and sometimes Amazon, doesn't So
it's always too expensive on Amazon getting beverages. You got to hit Sam's Club or Costco or something.
Our Costco doesn't have it.
Really?
So, we're out stupid Ann Arbor. Yeah,
our Sam's Club does have the Premier Protein ones. I don't see the Fairlife ones.
Ugh. Yeah, if it was at Costco, I would 100% buy it. It's the best.
Have you taken one of those vanilla flavored pre-made and mixed it with a diet soda, like a diet root beer? Yeah, like a diet root beer,
like a cream soda.
Yes, and it's like a melted root beer float.
I've never heard of that until now.
It's jizztastic. It's jizztastic. But yeah, that's it. It's beautiful. It just is a total game changer in terms of it's just something different.
Jimmy just educated a doctor live on the show.
Amazing.
Now, I'm not going to lie. The first time I saw that was Beth Farraco.
Okay.
She did a diet Dr. Pepper cream soda.
Mm-hmm.
I was not, then I ended up doing that one. I wasn't a fan. It was like too much vanilla flavor. I'm like, I should have, then when I did the root beer with the vanilla Premier Protein or Fairlife, whatever I had, I was like, this is good. This is good.
Wow.
I'm gonna go.
You got to pour it both at the same time just because it's exciting to watch. Yeah, it's a good one. So there you go.
I'm gonna change the format of our entire show again because I'm an asshole. We're obviously gonna stalk you and try to get Mike on here at some point. But for whoever our next guest is, who we already know, you don't know, what's a question that you want us to ask our next guest?
Ooh.
Why do you suck so much?
Oh my God.
Listen, it wasn't our question. It was our last guest, Christle Guevarra.
I'm going to tell you who our next guest is after you answer this question because it's going to be funny.
Oh, gosh. I have no idea who I'm just thinking about a coach. I feel how you got started in fitness is so like blah.
It is. And Jimmy, you have to write this down so we actually do ask the question.
Take me through your most difficult client and what were some challenges you had to face with that and how did you navigate and what was the outcome of that?
Okay. So difficult client. Why was it difficult? What changes were made and how to navigate through those changes?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, do you want to know who our next guest is?
Yeah.
Eric Trexler.
Oh.
I figured you'd appreciate that. And I don't know that Eric actually coaches anybody.
Oh, has he ever coached anybody?
I don't know that he's always been on the academia side or not, but I think it'll be interesting to hear. And I'm going to make sure that he knows that you asked that question.
Oh God. because I expected a coach.
That's well, if he's like, I've never coached anybody, so no, then we'll just save that question for the next person.
Yeah, because
save it for Mike.
Yeah, save it for Mike and make sure that he, if he talks about somebody with hunger issues, he's like, are you sure they weren't like, 4'11", 150-pound Filipino person who lives in your home?
Well, Christle, thank you for coming on. We would pick your brain for another 4 hours. We're going to definitely make sure that people go out and reach out and find you, because I think your information out there is always good. And I appreciate just generally how much you support and are involved in this business, given the fact that you're also on this medical side as well. And I think if we had more medical professionals that were doing what you were doing, we would have a much different outcome out there.
I hope to sort of bridge hopefully, try and bridge that gap from fitness professionals and, the healthcare, the physicians who are sort of just like trying to make things work. And I think they could, you like, hey, we exist, like the fitness space exists, and they're actually a really good resource. But
man, that's awesome. Well, as always, how do you feel about bye?